Kia ora, Jodine. Thanks so much for joining us on the Business Your Way podcast today. To get us started, I would love if you would introduce yourself to our listeners. Who are you? What are the services that you deliver and how you make your moolah?
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much for having me. It's so exciting to be here today. I'm Jodine McIntyre. I'm also known as Social Smarty. So I am all about teaching self-made business owners how to show up consistently and confidently on social media. Now, I've pinched that self-made business owners line from Zero. I don't know if you've seen their recent marketing, but I love saying self-made business owners rather than small business owners, because we all know that sometimes being in business, even if it is a small business, doesn't feel so small. And so the way that I make my moolah is through one-to-one training. I also run lots of workshops, both in person and online. And I have a membership. So I have a membership with lots of amazing business owners in there. And I help them with supporting them with their social media marketing and giving them resources and training and all sorts of things inside the membership.
That's beautiful. And I love that you've borrowed that from Zero. That's when I read that in your bio, I was like, that's a really cool way of saying it, because it's like describing your audience so they self-identify is such a hard thing to do. So I love that way. Has it taken a bit of a while to like adjust to saying, this is who I help, like getting that rolling off your tongue?
Yeah, and I've had a few friends and other women in business who I work closely with who have suggested that maybe my audience doesn't self-identify as self-made, and that small business is probably a better title to use. And you're exactly right. It's about someone landing on my website or finding me on social media and thinking, yeah, I'm in the right place. So I think it's still a work in progress, but I think, I think the key thing for me is around building confidence, and that's really important in my messaging. So a lot of social media trainers will teach you the very best way to do things, or all the latest trends, or, how to show up, on live and post 5 times a day and that sort of thing. Whereas I just want to build your confidence. So if someone lands on my website, finds me on social media and thinks, yep, I really struggle with confidence, then I'm hoping that they can self-identify and say, well, this is the gal to help me.
Nice. And how did you get here? Like, how did you get to starting and operating Social Smarty and then starting the membership? Like, what does that look like what got you from there to here?
Yeah. So my background is actually event management. So when I was at university, I did do a Bachelor of Business Studies. So I studied business at university. But like most university students, I had that job on the side, which was in hospitality. And I was 21 years old, and I was running a restaurant. So I was studying extramurally by correspondence and also working as a maitre d' in a restaurant. And the event manager had to suddenly leave. And it was right at the start of a very, very busy wedding season. We had about 60 weddings booked in over the summer. And my manager came to me and said, how would you like to try your hand at the event management role? And I just thought, yeah, this would be amazing. I didn't know if I could do it, but I thought I'll give it a go. And that was just the start of my event management career. And I ended up doing event management in London and over in Australia and all sorts of places. But in every single event management role, I tried to weasel my way into the marketing as well. So I'd always put my hand up and say, like, I'll do the social media, or can I set up a Facebook page, or, can I write some emails? Let's have a wine club. And, I was always trying to take on that sort of marketing role. And then I ended up with a job over in Queensland in Australia. And the role was events and communications for the Queensland State Equestrian Centre. And it was almost like someone had taken my life, and I used to ride horses when I was younger, and I studied business and marketing at university, and I was running events, and it was almost like someone had literally written this job description for me. They'd gone, how can we make it extra, Jodine? I know, we'll throw horses into the mix. So I ended up in this role, and that's where my sort of marketing side of things really took off. And then when I moved back to New Zealand, I was pregnant, and I took some time out, as you do, to have babies. And then I remember it like it was yesterday. I was walking around the park across the road from our house, and I had the baby in the pram, and I'm walking away with my podcast on, and I'm a huge fan of Amy Porterfield. Like, I know not everyone loves her, but I do. And I was listening to one of her episodes, and it was actually an episode with her husband, and she was talking about how in business, her husband had never, ever questioned her. He'd always been her biggest cheerleader. And I just thought, right. And I walked in the door and I said to my husband, I'm quitting my job, my part-time job, and I'm going to become a social media manager. And without hesitating, he said, cool, awesome, yep, great. And I thought, wow, he's just like Amy Porterfield's husband. I can be just like her. So I was kind of delusional, probably lack of sleep with the baby. And I went and met with a lady who worked in marketing. And I sort of looked at her as a bit of a mentor. And I said, I really want to make the shift into social media marketing, digital marketing, and move away from events. And she actually offered me a job then and there. So it was pretty exciting. And so my role was with our local economic development agency for Hawke's Bay, which is the region that I live in. And so where I was based was what we called our business hub. So business owners could come in off the street, or someone with an idea for a business. And there was, I think there was about 12 different, agencies, organizations that were all around supporting business. So we had New Zealand Trade and Enterprise, we had the Chamber of Commerce, all these sorts of people all in one location in Hawke's Bay. Amazing. And so my role was actually digital marketing for the organization and also for the facility as well. But of course, when someone would walk in off the street and say, I've got this great idea and I know social media is the way to go, but I don't know how to use it, my colleagues would just go and get me from out the back. And they'd say, oh, Jodine's really good at that stuff. I'll go and grab her, see if she's got 10 minutes to have a chat with you. And so during my 10 months in that role, I realized that there was this real gap in the market locally for someone to teach you how to manage your social media. So there was a lot of agencies that would do it for you. There was a lot of freelancers that would do it for you, but there was no one who was really in that space of just teaching and training and upskilling those business owners. So it was a very easy transition for me. I resigned from that role, and instead of my colleagues saying, I'll go and grab Jodine from out the back, I just gave them a stack of business cards. And so they'd say, here you go, there's Jodine's card, give her a call. So there was no sort of research and development. I didn't write a business plan. It wasn't this sort of big, dramatic creating a business, anything like that. It was literally just, I saw an opportunity and I just went, right, let's run with it. So, and here I am nearly 5.5 years later.
That is a journey. I mean, I love that you had the vision of, replicating Amy Porterfield because of the interview with your husband. Of all, of all
delusional.
The things she teaches. Yeah. So good. But she is a big inspiration to a lot of people, and just making it feel it is possible for all of us to start a business and to go into business and to be successful in business.
Yeah.
But I also love that piece where it has been that natural transition for you from one piece to the next. What was and maybe I missed this, but what was the thought behind going and, getting that job at that regional development agency when you'd kind of already heard the podcast and thought, right, I'm going to go out into business on my own?
Yeah.
There were one decision and then oh, let me go get a job in the meantime? What was that?
It was safe. It wasn't so scary. I was nervous. And it also felt like a good way to build my skills a little bit and, get some really good experience without having to do it in my own time. And you know what I mean? It just felt like a safe opportunity. But yeah, in hindsight, I mean, it really was the right thing to do, and it led to a huge opportunity and lots of connections. But yeah, you're right. It was an interesting choice, but I think it was just the safety. It was just I was worried about going out on my own. I must admit, in that 10 months, I did have sort of clients on the side. I mean, I was very open with my manager, and we, when I'd get a new client come on board, she knew that there wasn't any conflict of interest. But yeah, it just felt like a safe way to do it. Yeah. Less scary.
And were your initial clients all local to you? So you'd built that local market?
Yeah. The big driver for me moving outside of the region was COVID. Pre-COVID, I was all local. And then during COVID, it just opened up the doors. I could work with people online. And because a lot of my audience who, if I talk about my audience as lacking confidence and feeling like they might look silly when they, post something to social media, sometimes they'll say that they're technophobes or they really struggle with the technical side of things. And so then to expect them to understand Zoom and to teach them remotely, that felt like another sort of barrier. But as soon as COVID hit and we had no choice, and all these business owners learned very quickly how to use Zoom, that was just amazing for my business. Like that COVID period was so big for my business in terms of growth. And it sounds wild to say because all around me, I could see business owners struggling, people going out of business, and here I am booming. So yeah, it was a really interesting time.
Definitely was. And I agree with you. I think that COVID really leapfrogged us 5 years instantly in terms of the technology and the way that we do business. So for my business, the piece I was always asked was, where are you based? Where are you based? And so we always had to have a physical office, or felt we had to have a physical office in order to answer that question. COVID hit, we went remote. We were already remote capable. Yeah. We went remote and we've not looked back. And now I'm super comfortable at saying, we're remote by default. And that doesn't even get a blink of the eye. Like that doesn't even, once upon a time it would be, I can't work with you if you're not local. And that just doesn't exist anymore, I don't think. So I agree that COVID period just opened up a whole lot of doors very quickly for small business to operate in a much bigger marketplace. So,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So in the last 5 years, what's been your biggest challenge, would you say?
Yeah. So I've had 2 really big challenges. So the first one is imposter syndrome. And I know that a lot of your listeners will resonate with that. I've spent a lot of time thinking that, I'm not good enough, and that I don't know enough. People will find out that I don't know everything. And like that sounds like, you poor thing, just get on with it. But the 2 ways that sort of manifests for me is, number one is saying no to opportunities and, things that I could have done that I've said no to. And in hindsight, they could have been really beneficial for my business. And the other thing I do around imposter syndrome is I over prepare for everything. So I have spent working until the early hours of the morning preparing to speak at a conference, for example. And then when I get up there and speak, it all just flows and I know my stuff. And I could have just got up there and winged it, but I don't. I spend all this time over preparing, and it's all around that imposter syndrome. I just think if I'm prepared and I have all the answers and, I spend all this time thinking, what could someone ask me? What questions might they have? And then I research things. And then in reality, I need to trust myself more, and and I'm getting better at it. I'm certainly much better than, when I started out. And I just think imposter syndrome is a real challenge.
Yeah. And you're definitely not alone there.
Yeah.
Do you think part of that also is getting comfortable with the business and the business speak and talking about your business? Because the more you do that, the more it will flow. So as time goes by, have you felt less and less and less of that imposter syndrome as you...
Oh, totally.
As you go?
Yeah, 100%. That's definitely getting better. I mean, there's still situations where, and often I find my imposter syndrome sort of rearing its head again when I work with maybe people that I find a little bit intimidating, or maybe it's companies that have, a really large international following, or where I feel like they've got that sort of, they're a big company, and I think, gosh, I've really got to come in here and make an impact and really wow them. And in reality, so many people just have the same challenges with social media. It doesn't matter if you have 100,000 followers or 100 followers, a lot of those challenges they have are the same, and I can help them with those challenges. So I need to just, lean into it a little bit more and recognize that I do know my stuff. But yeah, I mentioned 2 challenges. So one was imposter syndrome. But the second one is, like many women over 40. I have recently been diagnosed with ADHD, and part of that journey was my son's diagnosis. And I hear that it's very, very common when your children are diagnosed and you start to sort of evaluate your own life, and then that leads to your own diagnosis. And for me, the real challenge with that is if something is not interesting, exciting, or urgent, I can almost can't do it. I really, really struggle. And so I feel like I've built my business in a way that everything I do is either really exciting or it's urgent. And that's because when I work with a client one-to-one, or when I work, if I run a workshop or I run a webinar, that date is set in my calendar. If I was doing done for you social media, and I had, 10 posts that I had to create for a client, but I had a whole month to do it, I'm almost certain I would never do it, because there wouldn't be that urgency, or I'd leave it to that very last day of the month, or you know what I mean? Whereas the way that I operate is like, that's when I'm having my client session, or that's when the workshop is. I have to deliver by that date. So yes, I do a lot of last minute sort of things. But yeah, I've really sort of created my business in a way that works with that ADHD.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's interesting, the diagnosis, recently I hear more and more people being diagnosed with the ADHD.
Yeah.
There could be a lot of things going on with that. But the thing that interests me is your background in event management, because event management is all deadline driven.
Totally.
The date of the event doesn't change. There's 101 things to do, and there's 101 things that could go wrong.
Yeah.
So that way of working, always
totally
being
works for
switched
me
on, is probably something that we've learnt as well. Because I know, like, I haven't had that diagnosis, and I'm not interested in really having that diagnosis, but I do know for me that part of my MO, and that's because I've been in the event industry for so long, is that it's deadline driven. And when it's got urgency, I just buckle down and do it, like get it done.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So, have you sat with that a little while and gone,
yes,
was I always ADHD, or is this kind of learnt behavior because of my background?
Yeah. The way that, so with the diagnosis process, it goes back to childhood. So, you need to supply a lot of information from your childhood. They won't just look at your current state and diagnose that way. So, like it goes back, I had to get my mum involved in the process, school reports, all sorts of things.
Wow.
So, yeah, there's definitely a lot that goes into it before I worked in event management.
Yeah.
But what it has done is it's made me realize how I was so successful in that career and how I did find it really easy. I mean, in a crisis, when things go wrong, and I used to have people comment on it, my colleagues would say, like, why are you not freaking out right now? Like, everything's going wrong. Why are you so calm? And it's like, this is where I excel. This is where I find it easiest. And I remember training new staff, and I'd say to them, like, part of your role is putting out fires. Like event management, you can have everything planned, but there will be something that you have to deal with last minute. And that's not a reflection on you or the job that you've done to that point. It's literally just the nature of events. So you need to understand that part of your role is going to be thinking on your feet, coming up with solutions, managing what's happening around you. So it's interesting though.
And what does that look like, going from event management into social media management and business ownership? That business ownership is very self-driven. How have you made that transition?
Yeah. And again, I think it comes down to the way that I've structured my business so that I can have those hard deadlines and that I work with clients. It's almost like this sounds terrible, but it's almost like I have given myself an external driver. So, we think about business owners as having to be very motivated and self-driven and self-motivated. But I almost feel like the way that I've got my business set up is that I do have those external things that keep me motivated. It's not just, me sitting there and thinking, right, I need to do this. The other thing I do is I make a lot of commitments publicly. So for example, like I make it very clear that I send an email every single week. And then I feel like it's almost like I'm letting people down if I don't send that email that week. So it's kind of hard to explain, but I almost make it so that it's external to me, so that I make that sort of commitment, but I've made it to someone else, so that if I was just making that commitment with myself, I'd probably let myself down and say, oh, well, I'll just, forget it for this week, or I'm too busy or something like that. Whereas, I've said I'll do it every week, and I do it every week.
Yeah, nice. I love how you've found that that's what works for you, because like being in business yourself and having to set your own deadlines and be your own boss, there's that ability to just let things slide and glide. And
and I imagine a lot of people just aren't made for that, and that's absolutely fine. Like if you're not motivated in that way, and you need a boss, or you need management, or whatever that looks like, then that's totally fine, but it's just the way that I've made things work.
And I think that's the key, is we're figuring out what works for you, how you operate, and knowing yourself and what's going to work for you. What is going to get you out of bed in the morning? What is going to get that thing done and keep you moving towards the goals that you have for your business? So, working out what your style is, how that works for you, where are your challenges, and what do you want to put in place to navigate those challenges for yourself. So love that you've worked that out and kind of gone, all right, this is what works for me, and this is how I'm going to keep myself accountable to keeping my business moving and towards the goals.
I will just quickly say that I haven't got it perfect.
Sure.
I make it sound like I've got all the answers, but it's still a work in progress. And there's times where I do let myself down, and there's times where, I just take a day off. And that's that.
But I think we're all human, right? Is sometimes I listen to someone who says, they've got it all, and it sounds like they've got it all together, but that
totally.
We're all human, and sometimes that's just not how it rolls.
Yeah.
But I think it is about finding out about ourselves and how we can operate our business in a way that works for us, and how we operate and how our brain functions, and how that fits with our life.
And having that ADHD diagnosis, and while I know that, it seems like it's just such a big trend at the moment, and, people sort of almost roll their eyes, another one. But for me, it's been a real journey of learning how I work and how I can, change my environment or the way that I do things so that it actually works for me and makes my life easier. So it has been a really positive thing for me. I'm sure that, not the same for everyone, but for me, it's been a really positive journey.
Nice. What would be one of the things, once you've got the diagnosis, what was that aha moment for you of, oh, that's why that's not working, and I'm really pushing that wheelbarrow up the hill?
I've had so many of those moments. I couldn't pick one. It's about when you research and you learn and you see yourself reflected. It's talking to other people who have the same, challenges, and hearing that you're not alone. It's, even just watching TikToks or seeing people post in Facebook groups. I'm a member of the New Zealand, I forget what it's called. It's like a New Zealand ADHD support group. And someone posted something literally yesterday, and I had done the exact same thing. And what she'd done is she had gone down this big rabbit hole of researching her family history. And she had signed up for a free trial of myheritage.com or something like that, thinking that she'd do the free trial and then cancel. And of course, she hadn't cancelled, and she got charged the $500 annual subscription. Then she had to go on. I literally did this. Like 6 months ago, I was until 2 a.m. in the morning, 3 nights in a row, researching my family, signed up for the free trial, got charged because I completely forgot to cancel it. And just seeing that just makes you giggle, and you're like, and I'm not saying that someone without ADHD couldn't do the exact same thing, but it just makes you feel like you're not alone. The other thing that's quite interesting is my business coach. She actually is neurodivergent as well, and she has a group where she brings together a lot of women in business and digital marketing, and I would say 90% of us in that group are also neurodivergent. So to have those challenges you can share and have people really understand at a different level the challenges that you're going through is just invaluable. Like, I have felt so supported. I have felt so just, part of a community. Whereas for so many years I felt different and I couldn't pinpoint why I didn't feel like I fitted in. And now I've kind of found my people. And yeah, it sounds I can hear myself saying it out loud and it sounds kind of like, oh, okay, whatever. But, it's just been life-changing for me. It's been really amazing.
Oh, that's so good to hear, because it is lonely. And when you find your people and you find yourself reflected and you've got that commonality, it does feel like you're not alone.
Yeah.
So yay you. Like,
thank you.
Getting to that point is a big, like that's huge. Finding a group of business people where you feel like you have found others and you have commonality.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a beautiful thing. What would you say have been your biggest wins in the last 5 years, where you've just maybe it's been expected because it's been the goal, this has been the goal and I've nailed it, and maybe some have been unexpected along the way in the last 5 years?
Yeah, I really struggle with this because of the nature of my business. There's nothing sort of earth-shattering about my business. It's been sort of a really slow, it felt slow, but just little sort of chipping away, little things like my first 5K month, and then you have your first 10K month, and then I launched the membership and I launched my podcast, and then most recently I doubled the number of members in my membership with a really successful launch, and all these kind of little milestones that add up to the big picture. But when you're in your business, you just kind of look to the next thing and you think, oh, yep, and I'll do that. And then you get that done and you're already looking to the next thing. And I feel like there hasn't just been I haven't made $1 million in a month, or I haven't, had this massive success like some people talk about, particularly on social media. But yeah, it's just all those little milestones that just seem to add up. And then you look back and you think, wow, I did all of that. So it's just all those little things.
Yeah, I agree. It does. It's all of those little milestones that you don't even maybe recognize along the way, because you just keep going and keep going and keep going. So what does your business look like today? How many staff have you got? What does that look like?
Yeah, so I don't have any staff. I have a virtual assistant who supports me. In the past, I have had contractors, and at one point I had 3 contractors working for me and no more. So I quite like having quite a lean business, very sort of, I guess, agile, and I can do what I want when I want. It's just me. And then I have a virtual assistant who works 15 hours a week just to support me with administration stuff. But it's very much just me. I am the business. And because of that, what I have tried to do is look at other ways to leverage, create income that's not based off my time, because I only have a certain number of hours in the week. I'm a mum. I do the school drop off and pick up every day. So I've got a very short window of time. And when I built my business around one-to-one coaching, I quickly realized, I can see maybe 3 clients in a day. That's going to be a hectic day, and that's going to be my income potential. So what I needed to do was look at how I could create income that wasn't just trading time for money. So that's where the membership came in. So effectively, that's income that I can just grow and grow and grow. Whether I have 10 members or 100 members or 1,000 members, it's not a heck of a lot more effort for me. I'm still showing up in the same way. I'm still doing that monthly masterclass. I'm still creating the resources for them. But it means that I can grow my income that way. Other ways are like my YouTube channel is now monetized. So I get income through YouTube as well. I get income through affiliate relationships. So software that I recommend, and just looking at other sort of income streams to increase that revenue.
Nice. Talk to me a bit about your YouTube channel. What do you do? What do you use YouTube for as a marketing channel?
Yeah, so YouTube is just a big search engine. So just like Google, it's the second largest search engine in the world. And so that's the way that I use it. So in the same way that I would create content for my website that is search engine optimized. So I would look at what people are searching for online and create content that fits with those search queries. I do the same thing with YouTube. So for example, if there's a lot of people who are searching for how to reorder their Instagram stories, their highlights. So on Instagram, you have your highlights at the top of your profile, and you might want a particular order for them. So if there's a lot of people that are searching that question, then I create a video that tells them how to do that. And then the more views that I get, the more money that YouTube pays me. So yeah, it's literally just in the same way that you'd write blog posts or create, any sort of content marketing where you create thinking about that search engine optimization. I do the same with my YouTube videos.
Right. And do you connect your YouTube content to your other social platforms? Like, do you
I do.
repurpose?
Yeah, absolutely. So because YouTube is very much a sort of horizontal TV style, long format content, if I am to repurpose that content, then I do need to chunk it down into bite-sized pieces that makes more sense on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, wherever it is that I'm posting it. But now we have YouTube Shorts. So YouTube has its own version of that more short form vertical video. So that's another way that I can repurpose the content. What I often do as well is in the video, I will reference for example, a document or a checklist or some other kind of lead magnet that they can download to get more information. So what I'm doing is I'm driving them from my video into my email community. And then in my email community is often where I will, sell them a one-to-one session or whatever it is. The other thing I often do is I will invite someone, if they're struggling in that video, to follow that video to come and book a one-on-one session for me. And that's been really good for international clients. So I have one video which teaches you how to connect up your Shopify store with your Facebook and Instagram accounts. And it is quite technical. And even though I give people in that video all of the steps that they need, there's still a portion of people that really struggle with that. So then I make it very clear at the top of that video, if you are struggling, click here to book a one-to-one session with me. And that's where I'll get a lot of those international clients. They'll just look at the video. I'm lost. I need help. Click into my calendar, paying with US dollars, booking a session, a one-to-one session with me. So it can work well as, to drive leads to my business. And so it's just about thinking about that whole ecosystem and how you can keep people within your ecosystem. So rather than just giving them the piece of content and then abandoning them and, they sort of bounce away from you, we want to think, how can we lead them into that next point in my ecosystem?
And so was YouTube one of your first channels that you thought, yes, I want to be there?
Yeah.
Following on from that is tell us about what other social media channels that you've chosen for your business. Yeah. And was YouTube one of them for that SEO purpose?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a massive missed opportunity with YouTube and business owners. I think number one is they don't bother with it because they don't see how it can fit with their business. And number two, they don't understand that it's a search engine. So they'll create content in a way that doesn't actually lend itself to being found on the platform. But it can be massive. It can really, really drive some significant, attention your way. YouTube's big for me. Instagram, because I prefer Instagram. I like it as a user experience. So I spend a lot of my time on Instagram, which means, as a consumer, which means that I also spend a lot of time on their publishing content because I quite like the platform. I must admit, lately I've fallen out of love a little bit with LinkedIn. But LinkedIn makes sense. I'm B2B, it makes sense that I'd spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, and I haven't been lately. But Facebook in New Zealand is still number one, in terms of the number of users, how frequently we're on the platform. So I'm still very, very active on Facebook, particularly in Facebook groups as well. Here in New Zealand, we have a lot of groups for small business owners that I'm quite active in. I love Pinterest as a set and forget platform. So I have a lot of content on Pinterest. and it drives, quite a bit of traffic through to my site each month, and I haven't pinned anything there for months, or maybe a month. My best performing pin I pinned 2 or 3 years ago, and that's just constantly driving traffic through to my website. TikTok I enjoy, but I must admit I neglect it a little bit. I find with TikTok, because of the type of content you need to share, it does take a little bit more effort to create. It's not just whipping up something pretty in Canva. It's recording video. It's really thinking about the way that you present that content. So because of that, I'm a little bit less active there. What else have we got? I think that's all the major ones, isn't it? I don't use Snapchat. I don't use Clapper. I don't use BeReal, any of those ones. So, yeah.
Okay. And did you start with one, or did you just go all out and, set up them all and post and repurpose across them all, or has this been growing over time and you've just taken on one more platform as you've had the capacity? What does that look like for you?
No, my ADHD means I'm everywhere all the time. It's just get on everything and try and figure it out. Yeah. So no, it wasn't that would have been the sensible way to do things.
Right.
It was just jump on, dive in with 2 feet into everything that I do. So yeah, set everything up. But then I find there's a sort of an ebb and a flow. So like I said, at the moment, I've fallen out of love with LinkedIn and I'm quite quiet over there. That'll come back. So there'll be a time in the future that I'll fall back in love with LinkedIn and I'll be very active there, and I might neglect another platform. So while I have a system in place to repurpose content, and I do, I will show up, I won't show up as actively on a particular platform.
Right. And when you say active, what does that really look like?
Yeah. So there's two sort of, when we talk about showing up on social media, there's 2 aspects to it. So there's obviously the content creation. So you're publishing your own content, but the other side of social media is the engagement side of it. So that's where you're actively engaging with other people. So whether it's commenting on their content, following others, liking their posts, posting in Facebook groups. So yeah, there's 2 aspects to it. It's either posting to your own channels or it's engaging with others on their channels. And both are important. Again, I think a lot of business owners kind of maybe miss that opportunity of that engagement piece. They spend a lot of time pushing out their content, or they focus their energy on creating content and then forget to actually show up and be social on those platforms. Yeah.
And so someone where social media isn't their natural go-to, how much time would we have to spend on a platform to move that engagement or to see the results of engagement on a platform?
Yeah, so I recommend 10 to 15 minutes per week per platform. And I have this guy here. I don't know if you can see that, but I have a little timer that sits on my desk. So if I was to put in my calendar a 15-minute recurring appointment, I would snooze it every time. I would just ignore it and I would click away, and I'd be in the middle of doing something and I'd say, oh no, that's not important right now. But having a bit of a visual cue sitting on my, computer sitting right there, then I'm far more likely. So the way it works is I turn it to 15 minutes. So I pop the 15 minutes up, and you can hear it beeping away. And that starts the timer. And when it gets to the end of the 15 minutes, it switches off, it beeps at me. And so for 15 minutes, I just get busy commenting, liking, following, engaging, spending time doing that engagement piece. And I think that's really all you need to do. I mean, of course, the more you put out there, the better that is going to come back to you, the more that's going to come back to you. But I think 10 minutes even is really sufficient per platform per week.
That's not a lot of time at all, really. If you just allocated 15 minutes per day to a platform and change the platform every day, you probably nailed your engagement piece.
Yeah. And even on platforms like LinkedIn, you don't even need to post that frequently if you are showing up in that way. Because the way that LinkedIn works, and you might have noticed this, is that in your feed, you'll often see where your network has commented, or even where, let me explain that again. So what you'll often see is where someone in your network has commented on someone else's post. So even though that person hasn't created their own content, just the act of them commenting on someone else's post has popped them into your feed, where you get to see their name and their headline and their photo pop up in your feed, and then they pop up, become top of mind for you again. So even if you don't feel confident in creating your own content for LinkedIn, just the act of commenting on others can help you with your visibility on the platform.
That is a great tip.
Yeah.
And I didn't put that one and one together, because I see people in my network commenting and I'm like, oh, I wonder what that is. Off I go, have a look at that post, see what they commented.
Yeah.
But that makes perfect sense to me, and why the engagement is probably just as critical as the content creation piece, especially
absolutely.
on LinkedIn. How do we choose a social media platform for our own business? Does it matter the platform we choose, depending on whether we're in e-commerce or we're a service-based business, or is it, what would be the trigger to say, Sandra, you need to spend your time on LinkedIn. Don't worry about the others. Go there, do that. What would business owners need to think about in terms of choosing a number one platform, if you like? And if they had no other time, that's where their energy should go.
So it all comes down to your audience. Because if you think about the way that people use social media, all you're trying to do is go to them. So rather than drag people over to your website or the social media platform that you prefer, we need to go where they're spending time. So I would look at things like the age demographic. So if you're targeting a younger audience, and particularly a younger female audience, you're going to be wasting your time on Facebook. They're all over Instagram and TikTok. If you are in the more B2B, business to business space, LinkedIn is a really good space for that. Having said that, with LinkedIn, the tricky thing is that people are not as active on LinkedIn as they are on, say, Facebook. So LinkedIn, we might check in there on average, once a week or a couple of times a week, whereas Facebook, we're on there multiple times per day. So just think about who your target audience is, what is their behavior, and then meet them where they are. Don't try and drag them to a platform just because you prefer it. Use that as your number one platform.
And so if my target audience is businesses, should I be thinking about, they're only using LinkedIn in work hours, but what are they using in personal hours? And how can I get in front of them? How can I get in front of their eyeballs when they're actually just scrolling that platform in a personal capacity? Because no matter where we are, we wear all our hats all the time.
True.
So should I be thinking about that? Like, not just where they're spending their work hours, but where they're spending their personal hours?
Absolutely. And that's why we recommend scheduling content in advance. So if you know that your target audience are likely to get home, maybe it's mums and they're flat out busy with the kids and they're doing homework and they're getting the dinner and then they're cleaning up from the dinner. We want our content to go out early in the evening, or, sort of 6:30, 7 o'clock in the evening, so that when they sit down to have that scroll, or maybe like me, they're sitting next to their kids while their kids are trying to fall asleep because they still won't go to sleep on their own, and they're scrolling through their phone, that's when our content, we want it to be nice and fresh in their feed. So that's a really good question. Definitely think about your users' behavior, and it all comes, your target audience's behavior. It all comes down to how they use social media and getting a good handle on that. Because if you're targeting mums, like I just said, versus if you're targeting farmers, they're going to have a very, very different way of using the internet. Probably 7:30, 8 o'clock, they're probably falling asleep on the couch, not scrolling their phone. For them, we might schedule our content to go out at 5 a.m. when we know that they're getting up early, they're having a coffee, they're having a sit down and a scroll before they get out to do, feeding or milking or whatever farmers do these days. But just really think about who is your target audience, what does their day look like, how do they behave, and when are they most likely to be on social media.
How do we find out that information? How do we do that piece of research? Because we can, I mean, where do we even start?
Yeah. Um, I would go back to old school and I would ask them. I mean, there's so much about our business that comes back to talking to our target audience, understanding them. Our whole offering, the services we provide, the way that we market those services, everything has to center around our target audience. So we need to have a really good handle on them, and understanding their social media activity and the way they use social media is just a part of that puzzle. So absolutely asking them. I mean, of course, you can do some research on the platforms themselves. You can look at in your analytics, you might be able to see when your target audience is most active. On Instagram, for example, you can jump into your analytics there. You can see which day of the week is the most popular for your target audience. I can almost guarantee that there won't be a particular day of the week because they're active every day of the week, but we can see what times they're more likely to be online. So, there are analytics within our platforms, but the other side of it is just a good old-fashioned conversation. Yeah.
How do we find our target audiences online? So when we're looking at curating our social feed,
Yes.
we don't want our social feed just to be the people that we're following and we are getting inspiration from for our own business.
Mm-hmm.
But we need to be, well, this is just my thought, following our target audience. So how would I go about finding them on social media?
Yeah. So easiest way is to do a search. So all social media platforms now work like search engines. So you can do a search. So LinkedIn is obviously a really good example because you can search by industry, you can search by job title, you can go to a company and search the people that are connected to that company page. There's lots of ways to do that on LinkedIn. On Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, of course, you can do searches. Facebook is great for groups. So you might do a search, for example, if you work with health and safety professionals, you might search for, Health and Safety NZ and find a Facebook group absolutely full of your target audience. On Instagram, often people will use their job or their industry within their username. So it might be like, Jodine Farmer Girl, for example, could be my username. So we can use a search in that way. So yeah, just absolutely, searching, using the platforms like search engines. The other thing that you can do, of course, is use the internet. So if you're in a B2B space, then you can, almost all companies these days will have a link to their social channels on their website. So if you prefer to use Google as a search engine, you could look for your target audience that way and click through from their website to their social channels to give them a follow, make a few comments, get on their radar that way. So yeah, there's lots of different ways that we can do it. But one of the things I would say is that the way that social media is changing at the moment is we're seeing a lot more recommended content. So when we scroll through our feeds, so particularly Facebook, Instagram, what we'll see now is a lot of posts from people we don't follow. So they're not our friends, they're not our family, they're not from businesses we follow. It's content that's recommended for us based on, our interests and the way that we behave online. So from a business perspective, that's a huge opportunity because it means that we can create content that resonates with our target audience and the platform will push it out for us. So it means that we don't need to put quite so much effort on building our own audience, but instead we can just really focus on creating content that resonates with our target audience, and then the platform will push it out to the people who are interested in that. So it's quite a bit of a shift in the social media world at the moment.
That's like great information. Like, I think unless you, in your role, where this is what you're doing day in and day out, I would never have known that. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. I'm like,
Yeah.
Good to know.
With the way that it all sort of came about was through TikTok. So TikTok sort of took the world by storm and grew very, very quickly. And the whole way that TikTok works, and that's part of its real appeal, is that it curates a feed of content for you. So normally when we use social media, we connect with people, we follow businesses, and we almost curate our own feed of content. But when we go to TikTok, there's this thing called the FYP, or the For You page, and it's literally just a feed of content that the platform itself determines that you might be interested in. And so when you first get on TikTok, you might think, what is all this rubbish? I'm not interested in all of this. But the longer you spend on the platform, the more it learns about you, and the more sort of relevant that content becomes. So when I now scroll on TikTok, all the content I see is highly, highly relevant and interesting to me, but it's not from people that I follow. So I haven't had that, I haven't had to follow a lot of accounts to build up that feed. And so the other social media platforms, of course, take note of this. So they see a major competitor that's growing in popularity, and they think, how can we do this? So in particular, Mark Zuckerberg, who owns, Facebook and Instagram and a lot of platforms, what he'll often do is, if he can't buy the technology, he will copy it, basically replicate what it does. And so that's what we're seeing on Facebook and Instagram, is a lot more content that's recommended for us. And it's just because it's worked so well over there on TikTok that it's now feeding into the other social media platforms. So huge opportunity for businesses. And the first sort of opportunity we got to use this type of feed was Reels. So Instagram Reels and Facebook Reels. So that was a completely separate sort of algorithm, or, back end working to determine who should see that content. So when we jump on Facebook or Instagram and we click on the little Reels icon and we get stuck on that conveyor belt of content where we're watching, video after video, you'll notice that most of that content is from people you don't follow. So it's all brand new content. And so that's the opportunity for businesses. So again, we don't have to build a massive following anymore. We just need to think about how we create content. Creating reels that are interesting to our target audience means the platform will show them to our people for us. We don't have to have that painful period of trying to build up that huge following.
So then comes the question, how do we get confident in creating the real content for the platforms that are going to get us in front of our target audience? Like, how do we get that confidence to show up and create content that we think is basic or silly or doesn't everyone know this? Like, how do we build that muscle?
Yeah. So it all comes down to having a framework and a system. So when you have a path to follow that someone has taught you, like me, or that someone has provided that is going to work, when you have the steps laid out in front of you, that's where the confidence comes. Because rather than having to trust your own instincts and your own, intuition and intelligence and all those things, literally you've got the path. You know that someone else has tested this for you and it's going to work. And so the way that I teach people to start with Reels is to keep it very, very simple. So we have a video. So all we need to make it a reel is a video. So it needs to be some sort of video. So what I teach is that we can even use stock video, or we can create a very, very simple, what we call B-roll video, where it's not you having to talk to camera. It's not you having to dance or lip sync or point or, do anything silly that's outside of your comfort zone. You don't even have to show your face. So we start with that sort of B-roll video footage. Canva's a really great place to go and find this type of video footage. There's also a website called Pexels, P-E-X-E-L-S, Pexels Video, where you can download free stock video. But the important thing about it is we're going to put our own message over the top of it, and we're going to use text. And so text is a lot less scary than putting your face out there on video. But what we're going to do is use a storytelling format. So I can almost guarantee that everyone can tell a story. When we're sitting around having a cup of tea with someone, we're very good at talking in a way that we know that that person would be interested in what we're talking about. And so we're going to translate that into text onto the top of that video. And then the last step is we're going to add a little bit of audio, and we're going to use that audio from within the platform so that we know that there won't be any copyright issues there. And so it's a very simple sort of structure. And then the last little step that I add in there is just to make sure that we use our caption in a way that tells the platform what it's about. So with the video, Instagram, Facebook, they're not clever enough yet to have a look at that video and go, oh, I know what that video is of. So we need to give as much information to the platform as possible so that when it pushes that reel out, it knows who to push it out to. And so again, I'll teach you how to write the caption, and that's where hashtags can be very useful as well, because hashtags give some extra context, some extra information to the platform. And then once we've got it all wrapped up in a nice bundle, we post it, we serve it up to the platform, and the platform goes, oh, I know exactly who would like to see this. And it can push it out to people who have never heard of us. We can get brand new eyeballs on our business.
Yeah. Talk to me a bit more about that content, because I think that's the stumbling point, right? Is
Yes.
we know what we know and we think that it's so basic.
Yeah.
Other people don't know what we know. And that's the piece that we need to be sharing. But I think we get in our own heads so much. I mean, I definitely know I do, that I'm like, oh, everyone knows that.
So it all comes back to your target audience. So when you're interacting with your clients or your customers, there's going to be some moments where they give you hints about what they're interested in. So when you share something with them, they're going to say something like, oh, I never knew that, or, oh, wow, that's so interesting. And it might even be in an email, or I never knew that. Those are the nuggets of gold that we want to share in our content. Everything comes back to our target audience. If we have them at the center of everything that we do in our business, then we're onto a winner. So think about those interactions you've had with a client. Maybe a client's come to you and said they're really struggling with something. You've given them the perfect solution. So that's the sort of thing that I want you to focus on, is think about all those client-customer interactions you've had. Where were those points of, aha moments for the client, or where they've told you, wow, that's so interesting, or thank you for sharing that with me. That's what we want to share with a wider audience.
Great points. How do we not be repetitive with that, though?
Oh, no, you'd want to be repetitive.
Okay.
Yeah, you want to repeat yourself. It'd be like creating a TV commercial and then going, oh, well, I don't want to be repetitive. So you just play it on channel 1 once. And you go, that $100,000 we spent on that, was being TV commercial. Well, we don't want to annoy people. We don't want to, it's the opposite of that. We need to repeat ourselves over and over again, because there's different ways that people consume social media. So I can pick up my phone and I've just had an argument with my husband and I'm thinking about how annoying he is, and I'm scrolling through my Instagram and I'm not taking notice of anything. Or I might be really into it and I see something pop up and I think, oh, yes, I must reach out to her, or I must book in with that chap or whoever it is. And then my kid yells, Mom, I've knocked my Milo over. And so you race off and go and sort that out. So we're very, very distracted in the way that we use social media. So that's why we have to repeat ourselves over and over again, so that then, it could take 2, 3, 4, even 5 times of appearing in someone's feed before they actually take action. And Facebook has actually told us this. So when you run paid ads on Facebook, often, the advice that you're given is once your ad has been seen by someone 5 times, that's sort of the point where they might not be taking action. So often when we're running ads on Facebook, we look at one of our metrics is frequency, and that tells us how many times someone has seen on average our ad. And when we hit that sort of frequency of 5, we think, okay, it might be time to change up our messaging, or change our image, or take a different approach with this ad. So please don't ever feel worried about repeating yourself. It's what we need to do in marketing. I love radio jingles, everything is about repetition until people are singing along with your jingle on the radio.
Beautiful. Like I was going to say, I love the TV analogy. Like when you're watching TV, the same ad is over and over and over and over. And you're like, please change the ad.
Yeah. And if you book ads, or if you book radio spots, your goal is always to get as many spots as possible for the smallest amount of money. Like that's what we want as business owners. Yeah. So social media, we have that opportunity to repeat ourselves, and of course you can take different ways of repeating yourselves. You can do different formats. You can put a different image with it. There's lots of ways that you can mix it up if you really feel worried about annoying people. But I promise you, if you scroll through my Instagram feed, you will see that I repeat myself, even just posting the exact same post over again.
Right. So you repurpose the same caption and change the graphic rather than same graphic, different caption? Like, what does that
You
look
could
like
do
for you?
either. So you could absolutely do that. I have even just used the same image and the same caption. People just, it's just the way that I get that message out there. And the other thing is if you leave some time in between it, so you could almost create 90 days worth of social media content and just repeat it every 90 days.
Wow.
Like that could be a very simple way to approach your social media, because number one, people don't always remember what they saw 90 days ago on social media. But number two, the more we repeat ourselves, the more likely people are to take action. So
great tips, like really simple, that gives the confidence to just keep going and not feel like you're on that content creation hamster wheel or hours of engagement. Nice, simple, easy. So in today's environment, we talked a lot about the confidence, the platforms, all revolving around your target audience. But like in today's environment, is this a must-have or is this a nice-to-have, do you think?
Do you mean social media marketing?
Yeah.
I mean, of course, I'm going to say it's a must-have. Like, that's probably a little bit obvious coming from me. And there are a few businesses out there that have pushed back and they've pulled away from social media marketing. And they're typically big businesses that have big marketing budgets who can invest in other platforms. Right. So, for example, they're the type of companies that could pay for TV advertising, radio advertising. But when I work with my clients who are, have smaller businesses that have a smaller marketing budget, the way I see it is that social media gives you a platform to reach a large number of your target audience for nothing. Yes, it will take your time, but if you're not willing to pay for paid advertising, literally social media is free. So I feel like while we might say technically, you don't have to use it, I think why wouldn't you? Also, your competitors are likely to be using it. Your target audience are likely to be using it. So why wouldn't we take that opportunity? That's sort of the way that I see it. And I might be a little bit different than other social media trainers in that I would rather you post something today than try and craft the perfect post that you might not get to post until next Tuesday by the time you've figured out the right caption and you've got the graphic just right or you've got the video sorted. I would rather you show up now and you would have the chance to get your message out there to people than wait to have the sort of perfect social media post. So when you don't post anything to social media, you don't have the chance to reach anyone. Whereas if you post something that might not be quite as perfect as you had hoped, you still have the ability to reach people with your message. So I'm definitely more of a let's get it done. Let's get you posting. The more you post, the more your confidence will grow. You can't get this wrong. Like I say that to all of my clients because that's their biggest fear is, what if I look like a dick? What if I get it wrong? What if someone laughs at me? And in my experience, number one, people are more worried about themselves and often, they'll look at your post and go, oh, look at her, she's doing it and I haven't posted all week and, they'll reflect back on themselves. But number two, you're a business owner, you're intelligent, you know your business, you're not going to get it wrong. If you approach social media in the same way you would at a networking event, when someone asks you about your business, you're not worried about getting that wrong. So now just because we're online and we've got the ability to reach more people, we get worried about it. But it's literally no different than picking the phone up and having a conversation with a potential client. We're going to use that same sort of information. We're going to talk about our business in a professional way. You just can't get this stuff wrong.
That's a good way to relation it to the other things that we already do in our business. We're already going to network functions to talk to people about what we do and see if there are our ideal clients at those networking functions. So thinking about social media in the same way, even though we potentially can't have that face-to-face engagement, it's still the same. Thinking about it the same way definitely makes the difference.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about your membership and what you are teaching inside of your membership when it comes to helping people grow their confidence on social media?
Yeah, so there's 3 aspects to the membership. The first thing is clarity, so getting really clear on the way that your accounts are set up. So what I do is I take you through and I break it down into all the platforms. So there's a LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, but I basically take you through how to make sure your account is set up correctly. And so it's looking at little things like making sure that the main action button on your Facebook page actually takes people where you want them to go. It's looking at how we use keywords. So because social media platforms work like search engines, and there's particular places we want to put keywords in. So I show you where to put those, how to make sure you've ticked all the right boxes and that sort of thing. So we get really clear on how to set up your social media channels. The other thing I teach is how to set up your Canva. So I'm a big Canva fan. So I teach people how to set up your Canva account and basically just get all of the tools in order that you need to succeed on social media. Another one I'll teach you is how to set up a social media scheduling tool. So I have a particular tool that I recommend, and I take you through how to get that all set up because I think that that's really important as well. So once all of that's set up, then we move into the second phase, which is around building your confidence. So I teach a particular framework with social media, and so creating content in a particular way that works in terms of marketing, and it makes it much easier so that you're not sitting there thinking, oh, what do I post today? You actually know, okay, it's Tuesday, I'm going to do this particular post. I also give you all of the Canva templates if you struggle with graphic design, teach you how to write captions, I teach you what hashtags are and when to use them and when not to use them, so that you can get really, really confident with your social media, so that you have that knowledge to go, right, I've got all the things I need, I can go out there and post. And then the third aspect of it is consistency. And that's where I have a Facebook group. So if you ever hit a hurdle, you come into the group and you say, SOS, this has happened, or I've got this horrible email that says they're going to shut down my Facebook page, or, is this spam? Should I click on the link? You've got somewhere to turn when, things aren't going as they should. And then the other thing we do is once a month, I have a masterclass. So live masterclass, of course, lots of people watch it on the replay, but that's about keeping you up to date with what's happening in the social media and digital marketing world. So often I'll present, or I might bring in expert presenters. But again, it's just about making sure that you've got the information you need, and also that you are excited about digital marketing. And often that masterclass is just enough that people go away and think, oh yes, I can do that, or I'm going to do that today. And so that's how we can help build on that consistency.
That's nice. And they can come in on a month-to-month basis, or there's a longer commitment required for the membership?
No, I don't think it's fair to lock anyone into a membership, particularly in these, tough times where businesses can change, and I don't want anyone to feel like they're giving me money that they don't want to be giving me. So you can cancel yourself. It's super easy. You can go in and just hit cancel, or do whatever you need to do to leave, or just flip me an email and say that you want to leave. So there's no minimum period. Doors are currently closed, so I only open doors a few times during the year, but there's a wait list. So if you wanted to jump on the wait list and be the first to hear when doors open up next, and I just find that's a nice way to sort of bring everyone in, new people in at once. I have a bit of an onboarding process to make sure that they're supported. It just works really well.
Right. That sounds like a great way to get support and be held as you are, getting your social media set up and being confident that I've got it set up right. You're not just winging it.
Yeah, and to have somewhere to turn when it doesn't go right, or
yeah.
Notification, just take a screenshot, flick it to me, and I'm like in your back pocket to make sure that you've got what you need when you need it.
We all love that, an expert in our back pocket.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about who's in that group. Do you have just service providers, or they are e-commerce, or they're tradies? What kinds of businesses come into your membership or come into your world as a whole?
Lots, all different types. So I have e-commerce, I have service-based businesses, I have probably about 80% are New Zealand-based, and then we have members from Australia, America, I'm trying to think where else. Yeah, I think that's mostly. And then we have, I have tradies in there. So I do a lot of work with the Motor Trade Association. And so often I'll find that when I'm presenting a webinar or a workshop for them, often I'll have people from there who want to come and get a bit more support and join the membership. So yeah, real sort of widespread, all sorts of different people in there.
Okay, great. That really helps. I know for me, I'm like, I want to go somewhere where there are service-based business owners.
Yeah.
And that just comes back to very early in my business journey. I felt like all of the training available all talked about products and it was all retail based. And I had to do a lot of interpreting, like, how does that going to work for my service-based business? So now my radar is switched on to where do I find other service-based business so I don't have to translate.
Yes.
So how do you, and in that membership, how do you cater for all of those different business types? And how, if I was a e-commerce coming in, how would I know that I'm on the right path for an e-commerce business?
Yeah, so most of it is pretty universal. So the setting up of your accounts is pretty universal, where you put your keywords. And again, like it comes down to that setup. So for example, you might have a link through to your online store from your Facebook page, or if you are service-based, you might have a link through to a contact me form, or you might have your phone number, or you might have an email address. So, you just, I always talk about what's that one action you want people to take, and that's what you use for your call to action button. So, a lot of it is really universal. And then the framework that I teach as well is very universal. So it doesn't matter if you're service-based, product-based, the framework will work for you. And then where there are a little bit of, I guess, nuance, there'll be some different resources. So for example, I have a resource in there, which is a spreadsheet that helps you track your metrics. So it tells you what you should be tracking and where to find that information. And I just created two versions. So one's a service-based spreadsheet or a spreadsheet for service-based businesses, and one's for e-commerce. But it's quite rare that I need to create multiple resources. Most of it is quite universal.
Love that. Love that. All righty. As we bring our episode to a close and wrap it up for today, thank you so much for being here. We have covered so much information, but it's all been really good, and I've learnt loads just listening to you. But before we wrap up today, what are 3 things that you would want to share with others who are growing a service-based business?
So I think one, I feel like a bit of a broken record, but really get to know your target audience, know what challenges them, what excites them, what keeps them up at night. And that's for your business as a whole. If you're creating services that your target audience doesn't really want, or that you're delivering them in a way that they're not interested in, we need to adapt to reach our target audience. And then, of course, your marketing. So when you're marketing to your target audience, if you can use the language that they use, if you can speak to the problems that they have, the challenges that they have, you want your target audience to look at your marketing and go, they get me, this person understands, or yes, I'm in the right place. So number one is getting very, very clear and getting, really well, getting to know your target audience really well. The second thing, I guess, would be not being afraid to adapt and evolve. And I think, we talked about, I hate to say it, but the word pivot, right through the whole COVID episode, it was like pivot, pivot, pivot. But I think that there really is something in there, is thinking about, the way that the business world changes and how we sort of adapt to it, I think is really important. And, I find it with younger business owners find it a lot easier, but often I will talk to an older business, and I shouldn't say this, but an older business owner, and they'll say something like, but we've always done it that way. Well, that's just the way that we do it. And it's like, okay, great, but let me challenge you on that. Is there a better way that we could be doing it? So, and it's hard often with software and systems, and you get to know it so well and you think, I couldn't possibly change, but then often there is a better way to do things. So don't be afraid to sort of adapt and evolve. And number 3, what would number 3 be? Oh, I think don't try and do it all on your own. And that's something that I tried to do in the start. Is I was obviously really concerned around money and spending too much money when I was starting out in business, but I feel like that slowed me down a bit. And as soon as I invested in a business coach, that's when my business really took off. And I often think about things like, I would never try and do my end of year, accounts or my tax return myself. Of course, I'd get an accountant and, I'd get help with that, or I'd sign up for Henry, or I'd do something where I know that I'm trusting a professional. So why do we think that, we can write our own marketing strategy, or we can plan our own marketing without a strategy or any kind of help, or even social media? Like, you go into business to do the thing that you do. You don't go into business to be an expert in social media. So why would you not find help? Why would you not find someone like me who can give you a leg up and help you with your social media marketing? We just don't have to do it all on our own. There's so many people out there that can help us.
Mm. And I think that is a New Zealand thing, right? We are the number 8 wire DIY pros.
Mm-hmm.
We will always try and do it ourselves before we will spend money getting the help that we need.
But spending the money that can earn more money, once you
Totally.
get systems in place, or, I'll have clients that'll say, oh, well, I don't want to pay for a subscription for this, that, the other. And you think, if you did pay for this subscription for that software, that would free up so much of your time doing that manual thing, that spreadsheet you're always updating or whatever it is. And then you'd have time to make more money. Like, it's just, but I've been there. And I don't want to criticize anyone who's in that place, but it's just, once you start to invest in yourself, you'll see that it can come back. And there are people who have maybe invested that haven't had, the best advice, or they haven't invested in the right people. And I'm sure that happens out there. But there are some really good people, particularly in New Zealand, business coaches and people who can support you.
That is really good, solid advice for us DIYers who just think it's just a little bit of time. But when you think about how you want to grow your business, we really need to think about where we need to spend our time, so we're not on the hamster wheel constantly doing all the things. So really solid, great advice. Thank you so much, Jodine. Thank you for being here today. The listeners to the podcast are going to take away so much. I'm going to stick all of your links into the show notes. So if they want to come and check out your world and maybe book a one-on-one session, or see what your membership is all about, so they can get a bit more confident in their social media approach and what they're doing, we'll put all of those in the show notes. But again, thank you so much for being here today. I've really appreciated it.
Thank you for having me. I really love this chat. It's been awesome.